Hi. So, last episode I talked about the Wheel of Time and the setting and stuff. So, these next few episodes I'm going to talk in depth about what is in the world, and what happened and the people. So, this episode I'm going to talk about the War of Power or War of Shadow, which ended the second age, and began the third age. Okay, so last episode I talked briefly about the War of Power and about the dragon. Now, the dragon was a man called Luz Durin Thelamon, and he was spun out by the pattern to save the world from the Dark One and lead the forces of light against the armies of shadow. So, Luz Durin Thelamon was the most powerful channeler ever to exist in the Age of Legends, rivaled only by Ishmael, who was just that much under him. So he was the highest among highest of Aes Sedai. He wore the Tamrilan ring, which is a sign of his status as, the big guy. Okay, so last episode, I talked to you about the War of Power, which began when Lanfear and her fellow scientists drilled into the pattern and created the bore to search for a power like the one power called the true power, which is what the Dark One uses, and inadvertently allowed him to influence the world freely. This caused a collapse in a previously completely utopian society. Crimes, murder, warfare, all of that became more common as brother fought brother, sister fought sister, fathers fought wives, brothers fought sisters. It was all over the place. So in fact it became so bad that war, murder, rape, stuff like that became part of spectator sport. People would go to these things and watch them for entertainment. Well, I suppose it's worse than Big Brother, but whatever. So the people who joined with the Shadow during this time known as the collapse, which lasted about 80 to 100 years between the Bore being created and the War of Power. Those people who wanted to join the side of the Shadow took a pilgrimage to Sheol Ghul, which was a huge mountain that was treated as a tourist destination during this time. It was tropical paradise, beautiful. But there, the Bore was, and there the Dark One had more influence. So the people who wanted to join him went there, and they swore their allegiance in the Pit of Doom, spelled with a D-H-O-O-M. And they swore to follow the side of darkness, and those who had no channeling ability, who were just normal people, were called Dark Friends, and those who had channeling ability were called Dreadlords. Those Aes Sedai who went over to him. And the 13 most powerful of them were called the Forsaken, and they went over at different times. Some of them went over during the War of Shadow, others went over during the collapse, as this time was known. Two in particular who went over to him during the collapse was Ishmael, who was the first to publicly announce his intention to join the Shadow, and he was called the Betrayer of Hope because of it. And another was Aginor, who was a genius geneticist but wanted to work outside the limits and constraints of the laws that had been placed upon him by the Hall of Servants and other Aes Sedai. So he joined the Shadow, and for them he created Shadowspawn, an army of Shadowspawn, huge creatures, dark creatures that, for the Dark One. So eventually the Dark One amassed so much influence and so many followers that they decided to rise up against the Aes Sedai and the current establishment and the light and free their master. And this kicked off the War of Shadow, War of Power. It was led by the Forsaken. So essentially, what you had was the armies of Shadow and the forces of Light. And the forces of Light had the Aes Sedai. They were led by the dragon, Unfortunately, being led by the dragon meant that some of his friends, who he considered friends before, but didn't now because he was arrogant, because they thought they should be leaders, went over to the side of the shadow, and some of them even became forsaken. I think there was about 4, maybe 5 of them. Bit iffy on the details, but yeah. So the forces of shadow had different layers. Think of it as a triangle. They had on the bottom, very bottom, they had dark friends and shadow spawns such as Trollocs. Trollocs were big, huge creatures that Aginor created as an amalgamation of beast and human, and they were just ugly. They were pure stock soldiers. Very, very, very good stock soldiers, quite strong. Above them were the Myrdal, which who were throwbacks from the Trolloc human genes. When Trollocs bred, somewhere down the line, you'd find a Myrdal. Myrdals were called Fades or Half-Men because they had no eyes and they just wore black and they were all pale. They would just they'd stare at you and you just freeze. It's horrible. And then above them were the Dreadlords, the Aes Sedai, who could channel. Well, obviously they could channel, but the channelers who joined him, joined the Dark One. And then above them were the Forsaken, were the 13 Forsaken, who were the 13 most powerful of all channelers who went over to the Dark One during this period. And then above them all was, of course, the Dark One. And yeah, so the Shadow began by conquering vast swathes of territory from here, there, and everywhere, and the Dark One allowed the Forsaken to govern territories as they would. One of them focused mainly on schools, educating children about the Dark One. Another just killed musicians. Another, unfortunately, let his people starve. It was a real range of people, but they were really cruel. And then the Light pushed back, managed to gather forces. They were unprepared, but they gathered forces eventually, and with the dragon at their head, they pushed the Shadow back. Unfortunately, the cities and towns that they had retaken, they discovered the horrible atrocities that the Trollocs and the Dreadlords and the Dark Friends and all those other people, the armies of Shadow, had performed, and that really was a loss of morale. Children, men, women, children, all just dead. Just dead. It was horrible. And because of that, the Shadow managed to regain some territory, and then the Light pushed back. It was a real push and pull situation, but eventually the Light couldn't sustain warfare anymore because so many people were going over to the Shadow. They saw that Shadow was going to win, and the Light was losing too much territory, and eventually the Light was pushed back to the walls of their capital city. And the Light had a real opportunity that it was going to lose. Everyone was going to die because, that's what the Dark One wants. So yeah, they lost because of two main reasons. It was the Shadow's willingness to use constructs such as Trollocs and Myrdal in battle, and also the Dark One's willingness to allow his followers to kill the populations, which, when the forces of the Light find, they would lose all hope, and just see these horrible things that happen, and they just lose all motivation. It was a dark time. All aspects of war were rediscovered, from this utopian society to just death everywhere. Can you imagine such a shock to the system? Must have been terrible. So yeah, the Light couldn't sustain warfare anymore. So two ideas postulated. One, by Latra Posa Dukan, was to build the two largest sangreals in existence, one male, one female. They were called the Odin Karl, and they were constructed because the dragon didn't agree with this. He didn't believe that brute force could destroy, or in fact stop the Dark One, because what they wanted to do was they wanted to use the power and push back all of the forces of Shadow into and around Sheol Ghul until a better solution could be devised. Interesting fact, sangreals or angreals are items that can allow the user to channel more power than would be more one power than be considered safe, and they're split into male and female, like the power. And yeah, so the dragon came up with another plan to use 7 seals that he created and directly attack, using a contingency of male and female channelers to attack Sheol Ghul and seal the Dark One back in his prison, back beyond time and the pattern. Unfortunately, Latra disagreed with this, and all female channelers made a pact, disagreed to not vote for it, and unfortunately he needed female and male channelers to get it done and also vote for it, so that failed. So the Chodron Khal began construction, and soon after they'd finished it, the city where they were building them was conquered. The Dark One didn't know anything about this, so don't worry about that. They still existed, but the city was gone. It was taken. So Latra wanted to retake this. Tried to think of a plan, but it wouldn't have succeeded. Too many Trollocs and everything. So the dragon took it upon himself to deal with it. He thought enough was enough. I've had it with these mother fudging shadow spawn in my mother fudging world. So he gathered together the 100 companions, which is really numbered 113, but that's not even it. He took them, he gathered them together, and he travelled to Sheol Ghul. There he attacked the mountain, which at the same time 13 Forsaken were having a meeting with the Dark One, and they attacked it. A little bit sketchy on the details exactly what happened, but what is known is that 68 of the 100 companions, including the dragon, survived and managed to seal the Dark One and the Forsaken back into the bore and outside of time. And yeah, so they succeeded essentially, all except for Ishmael, the Forsaken, who was only partially sealed for reasons I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was because he was very, very powerful, or maybe the Dark One just pushed him out of it, to help in his retaking of the world. So yeah, unfortunately, in the very seconds before the Dark One was pushed back out through the bore, and the bore was sealed, it wasn't sealed perfectly because there was only male channelers, and the greatest thing was to have female and male channelers. So anyway, the Dark One, in a counterstroke in revenge, tainted Sidin, because that was the power used to seal him. That was the only one who could access. So he tainted it, causing every single male channeler who tried to access Sidin or even channel at all would go mad and insane. And this unfortunately caused the breaking of the world, which ended the Second Age, the Age of Legends, and created the Third Age. They blitzed the place. They rose seas where lands were, lands where sea was, the whole world, and they just kill everyone. Luz Therenthelemon himself went around and killed everyone with his blood. But I'm getting too far into this. The video's going on too long, so I'll end it now. But next week, next episode, I'll talk about the breaking of the world and what happened, and about stuff like that. So yeah, good talk. Do the thingamaboops below, and I'll see you next time.